Well, hello.
Hello, Rich.
Hi, Camp. Do you want to announce the number on the phone again real quick?
Yeah, it's the people who'll be calling in on the phone. We have about 20 folks on the line with us. You guys, welcome to the Rich Volley webinar. Prepare yourself for the new year. As some of you found out, we had a number change. And the new number has been sent out in an email to the entire field. But if you've got other people that you know are going to be calling on the phone-only portion, the computer portion hasn't changed. It's still the same as it was. The phone number call-in is now 212-461-5860 with the same PIN as went out, 3190#. So if you've got any other folks you know want to call in, if you wouldn't mind contacting them or emailing them, so we make sure everybody gets on that wants to. But once again, we have emailed and tweeted out the changed number to the old. Everyone will get on. Thanks.
Okay, by the way, number change means number screw up. I guess there was a typo in the thing in one.
The last marketing email that went out, so.
Just one typo, it happens. So there we go. It's your Christmas. It's the Christmas gift. So let's go ahead and and begin. And you see the concept if you're on the computer, seeing the page that's up, preparing yourself for the new year. Now, some of this is just going to be a review of some things we did at this time last year. With that thought in mind, even before I review it, for those of you, and that's a lot of you, who need to tighten up and refine, and for a lot, just do, for the first time, a quality business plan. We thoroughly went through that in this webinar counterpart, December 2011, a year ago. Rather than just simply covering that same thing again, and I guess there had been some merit in that, I'm going to direct you to go online and review that. It's available, it's there, and so that's would be, I promise you, time well spent. My life was completely redirected in business and really in all other important areas when I got clear in my head and really had done the work and homework necessary to get into writing my personal plan for my personal life, my spiritual life, financial life. I mean, the principles work aimed at any set of goals or aspirations or dreams in your life. And of course, I got a thorough one written for business. I kept it updated. And the years that, as I read that, it increased my intensity, vastly improved my concentration, and kept me on the main things. And it had a profound impact. We'll talk more about that as we go. And so we all want to make 2013, bigger, better, more exciting, and better for our families and our loved ones than 2012. And no matter how well we did this year. And so let's review a few of the kind of Head Start principles. Maybe I can whet your appetite enough to get you to go look at the other one and to spend the time investing in yourself to get a plan and get on target. Goodness knows there's so many distractions every day, so many other thoughts that we have, that if we don't learn to improve our concentration and our focus on the main things and keep it there, that we perform way below our capacity. So, I'll talk to you a minute about visualization. Picturing things in your mind and where you want to head is kind of like that image of lightning striking. It's unbelievable how from 1 second to the next, your life could change when you start picturing the things you want to be, the kind of person you want to be, how you see yourself treating your family, how you see yourself treating people in the business, seeing yourself being more enthusiastic, visualizing yourself being more positive, visualizing yourself being kinder, visualizing yourself being a better personal prospector, a better personal recruiter, these things that are so important to have the right picture in your mind. Too many times, and most human beings walk around all day running on the movie theater of the movie screen, so to speak, of their mind, failure messages and fear and doubt and, oh my gosh, what if, and too often worst possible scenarios. And it's just not a good movie to watch, and so the effort it takes. And by the way, when you put some of these things in writing with description and you read to yourself how you're going to be more powerful or more dynamic or more encouraging or quicker to praise, all of these kinds of things, have a great power. What we're talking about is you taking over the job of being your own programmer. For a lot of your life, your parents program, teachers program, the friends you hang around with are your programmers. And frankly, no matter how good or, some of those situations are, you've got to take over your own programming. Otherwise, TV's doing it, and we got to teach our children how to do this too and make sure we're doing good programming with them. But it is a profound statement to think about you being your own programmer. Think about somebody sitting at the computer terminal of your life, programming it for you. And maybe they don't care about you, or maybe they don't like you at all, or maybe they don't understand the things they need to understand for your life to become what it needs to become, and you don't take over your own programming. It's not a good thought. It shouldn't be a thought that makes you comfortable or excites you, but the thought of taking over your own programming is a big deal. And so this is what we're talking about. Now, part of being your own programmer is written objectives, written things you want to accomplish, places you want to be, and I don't mean traveling. I'm talking about in your life, as in, here's a place you want to be, debt-free. That's a pretty good place. Here's another place you want to be, $250,000 in savings, and then another one, $500,000 in savings. Things like that. Where do you want to be? And have you gone through the exercise of writing them down with the objectives and the goals? And Trevor, what they call in business school, they didn't want it to be goals. Do you remember what you told me once? You don't? Okay. You told me something once, and I don't remember what it was either. Glad I brought it up. Anyway, so we'll call them goals. If we remember it, we'll include it in another webinar someday. Anyway, come back to the written game plan. Once you know what you want and it's out there, I'm using my hands right now as if you can see me. It's out there. Then you've got to kind of reverse engineer. What do you got to do every day, every week, every month to get to that goal? So in other words, if it was $250,000 in savings, what are you going to do in your business to create that profitability? The cool thing about the focus that you have in visualizing getting it is it energizes you, and it, like I say, increases your intensity, but also it starts increasing your belief. Now you're taking over your own programming, and and it's a big deal. And when you get the how I'm going to get there written down, the next key becomes repetition. And so you then are working on, and we're going to review this again here in the next few slides, of saying it to yourself over and over and over again. One of the things that people do all the time is they will repeat something that's not true about themselves, not true about others, over and over and over again. I mean, how do you think bigots get to be bigots? Racists get to be racist by simply, repeating something over and over. Usually they got plenty of it in their childhood. They say it over and over and over again. Ultimately, they believe that the way people look or their faith or their race, all these things cause them to be different, better, worse, whatever it is they're visualizing. And it's not true. It never has been true. And yet it has a huge impact on their life because of the lousy programming they get. Now, what do they call that? Garbage in, garbage out. And so we need to get good and worthy things written in our goals, in our plan, and repeat them over and over to ourselves. Goodness knows we're going to have plenty of other kinds of messages competing for our mind space and our belief, and a lot of them we aren't going to like, and trust me, you do not want the television or the news channel, programming you. Most of the people you might be spending time with, for the part-timers that are at work, or, take over that job yourself. Repeat the right thing. The other thing it'll give you is clarity. If you understand what I mean when I say this, most people go around all day fuzzy. They're just fuzzy. They don't know what it is they're really working for that day. They've lost sight of it, if they ever had sight of it. And they work a little bit on this, then they'll work a little bit on that. It's just fuzzy. I'd mentioned, I think last webinar, I have a little spiral notebook that I write down all the stuff I want to do the next day in it the night before. And so I get up and I know who I want to call, because I found that if I didn't do that, I'd reach the end of the day and I hadn't done a bunch of the things I had kind of thought about doing. And that's where the written part becomes important, in addition to the game plan that you read. And so when you're visualizing, you've taken over your own program, you have written goals, a written game plan to get there, you're repeating them to yourself regularly, the power of the clarity now, that each one is the power of visualization, written goals, etc. There's no substitute for clarity. And I think I've probably said enough about it. You've got to be clear on what it is you're heading for. Ultimately, all of this leads to a world-class concentration. You see this with certain athletes, and they call it being in the zone. I was talking to a very good friend of mine yesterday, and he was talking about his brother did a video. He was a basketball player, and in the video, and it showed it speeding up. The guy took 100 threes, and beyond the 3-point line, and made something like 86 of them. At one stretch, it was something like 50 in a row. Well, I tell you what, your concentration is pretty good when you're doing that. Not only do you have ability, but it's a focus level that most people don't understand. But you can understand it by doing these things. I promise when he's doing that, he's visualizing. He's programmed himself. I know he had some goals in writing and a plan to reach it, and was working the plan, repeated it to himself, and had clarity in who and what he wanted to become. And you need to also. World-class concentration is something that all of you are capable of, but very few of you are achieving. And I'll say it again. All of you are capable of it, but very few of you are achieving. What if you had world-class concentration in the areas of spiritual improvement? What if you had world-class concentration in relation to exercise and eating and personal health? What if you had world-class concentration in relation to your financial objectives, in your conduct? Would you frivolously spend money as easily? No. Would you be more focused on your saving? Yes. Would you be more focused on making and saving? Yes. And so these things are something you want to do in your business. It's the same thing. So here's some tips I give you from a business writing standpoint, from business planning, in relation to the kind of business plan you might want to have. So we talk about goals, and we're going to talk about objectives, and we're going to talk about deadlines. So let's start. This is from the extraordinary book, from the extraordinary mind. The book was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and so one of the things he taught it in relation to money, and I'm going to teach it in relation to things in the business that bring you money. Right? But I want you to be focused on what you want to earn, what you want to save also, or you're liable not to do it. So you fix in your mind the exact, notice it's underlined, number of recruits, sales, promotions, income, savings that you desire. You got to be definite as to the amount. There's great power, right? Great power in being definite. Again, remember I just said, most people are walking around fuzzy. They don't have an exact number of anything clear in their head. How many of you know exactly how many personal recruits you were going to get in December? How many exactly the team was going to get? What kind of production exactly? Were you clear on you were going to make happen personally and with your team and overall organization? When are we going to, what are the deadlines? Well, we'll talk more about that in a second. So the exactness is critical because your mind grabs hold of things that are clear. That's the power of it. Next one. Determine exactly what you intend to give in return. All right? Because see, the bottom line to this, and I've been talking a lot about this to different teams, hand-picked teams. You've got to pay a price, and it's going to be a great, intense one. You know, when I say faith, family, and business in my life, what I mean is faith, family, and business. I don't mean faith, family, business, and golf, tennis, TV, you know, any of those other kinds of things. You know, my recreation fits in my family time or in some of my church time or with my teammates in business. We have fun in doing those things. And so you've got to give up. Some of you got to give up TV. Some of you got to give up a hockey league. Some of you got to give up all kinds of other recreation and distractions. I'm not telling for the rest of your life, but for a period of time, you've got to give something. It's just like you come up to the counter with something you want to buy. You know, you've got to give something in exchange to take that out of the store. Right? Well, it's the same thing in life. What are you going to pay? You know, in return to achieve your goals and dreams? What are you going to pay? And the thing is time and much better organization of your time. That's another reason you want to have exactness and definiteness and the clarity of a plan. It's a big deal. And so let's look at the next one. You also have to have deadlines. Goals, objectives, deadlines. A definite date. You see, because if you're coming up on it and you're not getting it done, it increases your urgency. I mean, think about a football game with no end. You know, I mean, they just, somewhere along the line, they blew a whistle and called it a day. Some days the refs decide to have it be 2 hours. Some days they decide to have it be 3 hours. It might be 12 quarters today. What a goofy game that would be. You know, but because there is a definite time, the first half ends, the game ends, you see all kinds of frantic activity. It's called the 2-minute drill. Well, what if you got better at working at a 2-minute drill pace day in and day out? You know, it was certainly with an energy level about definiteness. I think I covered on the last time a year ago how I set dates for each one of my promotions working up to SMD and then EMD and these kinds of things. And I knew when I was falling behind, and it caused me to redouble my efforts, you know, and crank up my intensity and my passion talking to people because I didn't want to miss the date. And I remember I missed one. And because I missed it, and because I knew I missed it, I really did super increase what I was doing, and I caught up almost all that lost time by the next promotion. None of that occurs if I don't have a definite date. None of that occurs. All right? The other thing you've got to do with your deadlines is commit to them. You know, I mean, it's got to bother you. You know, because at that point I was committed to those deadlines, it had power in my life. And so commitment brings power. I get, you know, in relationships and in everything that you do. And so if you're not committed to getting better in your sport and you're playing it seriously, then, you know, that lackadaisical approach will cost you. You know, when you're in competition, you wish you were winning and you won't be. And you wish you were playing well, but you're not. And it's, you know, we struggle enough with that, even if we pay the price. And so look, exact numbers. Exactly what you're going to give in return. You know, I used to write, I'm going to give 6 days a week, you know, and 5 nights, because Saturday night I was at home, unless we had an event, went all day Saturday and went in the evening some. But typically Saturdays were family times, just like my Sundays were. You know, those things were sacred. That's how I could maintain balance while I was driving so hard during the time I was paying a price. But I wrote down the time, but it wasn't just time. I said I was going to give it a great deal of energy, and I was going to work harder at being more positive and enthusiastic than I'd ever worked in my life. These are the things that I gave in return to achieve it. You got to pay, and you got to commit. All right, let's look at the next one. With this now, you've got to come up with your strategy and your logistics. How am I going to get there? What are the pieces of the puzzle I got to fit into this picture? First, you got to create a definite plan. You know, so you've got to know, we're back to exactly, a clear, definite plan for carrying out your desire, and with it, begin at once, whether you're ready or not. So many times I hear people, and these are middle class players, people who don't make much money, who aren't moving very dynamically in any particular direction. And one of the things you hear, and by the way, if you self-convict when I'm talking about this, learn from it. I've done it all before, and none of us are coming in this thing knowing exactly how to get this stuff done, or we wouldn't need to be here. But here, look at it. You begin at once, whether you're ready or not. But how many times do you hear something like this? As soon as, even in your own mind, you say, as soon as I get that done, I'll start. And as soon as this life smooths out a little bit, I'll start. As soon as I get over the cold, I'll start. As soon as I get past this project at work, I'll start. As soon as we do this and take this trip in our family, we'll start. And you just keep doing that. Whereas the people who win begin at once. You're not ready perfectly. Everything's not just organized so. Ready or not, put your plan into action. You get a definite plan, start doing everything you can and the best you can to put your plan into action. Next thing is you got to write a clear, concise statement of your specific goals and objectives. Now, here we go. You're working on a plan. You're usually doing that with a notepad and you're writing notes and kind of getting your thoughts together. You've talked to a leader or a couple of leaders. You've gone on the webinar and looked back and gone through my thing, and you're kind of getting all this stuff. Now it's time to put it all together in a clear, concise statement of your specific goals and objectives. You establish a time limit for each one. You state what you intend to give in return, and you describe clearly the plan through which you intend to achieve them. So here's a statement. I'm gonna have this many recruits, personally, this many in the base in a month. Because you update this constantly as you go from time frame to time frame, a month or that kind of stuff. You might have some goals in there that are a year's time, like I'm going to have saved this much money by December 31st of 2012, or now 2013. And you have those year-long goals, but you have bite-sized pieces in your production, in your recruiting, and your activity that'll get you there. And again, time frame for each is always no open-ended stuff. You got to know when it is you're supposed to have it, what you give in return, and now you have a clear plan. Imagine holding that in your hand and how powerful it is. Everything's in print. What you want, why you want it, how you're going to get it. I mean, think about that. That's a loaded gun in a good way. And you aim it at your target, you're punching a hole in it. And that's where we want you. And so again, go back and review that, where I covered this comprehensively. I covered all this, but then I went through examples of a plan in personal life, in business life, family life, all that stuff, actual written ones that I had used and others had used. And so anyway, do that. Next one. Once you have that, you just don't sit it in a drawer, right? So here's what you got to do. You got to read your written plan, this statement, aloud, at least twice a day, morning and night. As you read it, here's where the visualization comes back in. See, feel, and believe yourself already achieving, already in possession of what it is you desire. The number of recruits, the base shop, the money in savings, the debt paid off, all these positive accomplishments, business and financial, but also see yourself, say you need to become a better listener for your wife. And that would be like an example of one of the things I wrote into my plan. And I remember there's a point in my life I thought I was pretty people skilled, that I was pretty dynamic in the people business. And Cindy had to take the slack out of my rope, and she said, "You know what, cowboy, you probably aren't quite as good as you think you are, because it's time for you to learn to listen to your wife a little bit more." And she was right. So I wrote it into the plan. I'm going to be better. When I come home at the end of the night, I'm not going to treat it like a finish line. I'm going to give it another hour and a half and listen to Cindy's day and what went on with our children and listen to her and what were the feelings and emotions in her heart, and treat her the way she deserved to be treated. But I reminded myself of that. And then as I read it, I pictured myself doing it. All of a sudden, now I'm coming home and I am doing it. I'm doing what I had pictured. I'd taken over my programming and I became a better husband and a better friend to my wife. And that blessed everything. So that's what I mean. As you read it, see it, feel it, believe it, that you're already that way. If you struggle with reaching out to people or being a little more enthusiastic, you were super private like I was. I wrote that down, that I needed to be more outgoing, and people who were around me, I needed to greet them. And then I proceeded to greet them and then talk to them and get to know them a little bit. And I just started proceeding to build that into a habit in my life, which turned me into, business-wise, a far better prospector. But as a human being, it turned me into a better, more friendly, warmer person that was going around being kind and saying nice things to people during the day. And if more and more and more of us became that way, the world's a better place. And so bottom line is, in parentheses, you see it there. You must see it before you'll have it. Because your mind will not take you places, will not take your body places it doesn't see itself taking you. It doesn't happen by accident. You just don't get in your car, start it, pull out of the driveway, just start driving down the road with no thought in your mind about where you want to go, and then later that day you find you got there anyway. Right? You've got to direct all this. Now, it says burning desire is critical. It's funny. I swear in our world today, burning desire, want things real bad, is like certain people think that's bad. And that's nuts. Don't ever fall into that trap, because wanting it real bad is how you end up there. Whether it's wanting to be a great husband, wanting to be a great father or wife or mother or friend or business leader or financially successful or debt-free. You guys, I'll let a little of this fire out of me. When I started out in this business, one of my big three was wanting to get out of debt. I had a couple of credit cards, a MasterCard and a Visa card, that I jacked up like most people do when they don't have the discipline and don't have a clue about what it feels like. The blessing in my life at that time was a different era. They wouldn't let me get that far in debt. There's a $1,000 minimum on each one. Nowadays, they'd love you to have a $5,000 minimum and get that much more in debt. But 1,000 seemed like it was on the moon to me, because I just didn't make hardly any money. And I had these two credit cards, and I got where I hated them. I hated the debt. I hated the statements coming. I remember there was a red stripe across the bottom when I was over my limit, and that sucker would show up in my mailbox with some regularity. And I developed this burning desire to get myself those things paid off and out of debt and stay out of debt my entire life. And that burning desire led us there. I had a phrase actually in my plan where I called it maintain your debt despising philosophy. Because at that point I was out of debt and I wanted to maintain hating debt, as part of my game plan. So the question to ask yourself is, how good are you going to feel when you do this? And go into 2013 with this done. Let this empower you. Get behind the wheel and in the driver's seat where you belong, and quit letting life kind of throw you around, or the whims of the day, or worse yet, other people's whims of the day, directing where you go. And anyway, enough said on that part. Some other things to supplement kind of your emotional resilience and intensity. Read good books. Listen to good messages. Cause you to grow, to be inspired. There's some people that I like to listen to in business and stuff, and I'll go in and listen to some of the things they do. Some of them are in other companies. And they're guys that I've been in business, had been in business with in the past, and some of this stuff triggers some things, and has really, really helped me with the stuff I want to get done. And one of the other things I want to encourage you to do is write deep and important emotions into all of this plan. In other words, just don't have it be a dry, I got to recruit this many people, I got to prospect this many people a month. That's what I call lower law. It's a target you got to have, but it's like the difference between somebody target shooting, rifle, and there's a target out there, and they're in a competition. And there's one thing about aiming at the target. There's nothing about winning the competition. You know, one is exciting, increase your intensity, you have a want to, you know, and all of a sudden, you know, your performance elevates because of the desire and the emotion you've tied up in, I want to beat somebody, I want to win. I'm not sure that's the greatest example. But the point is, you've got to put strong emotions. You know, in my early plan, the emotions of not wanting Cindy to have to work, us being able to have control of our family life and time, not being in debt, not having to put up with a bunch of politics and frankly, a bunch of low life stuff value-wise at where I used to work with the state of California, and the bad behavior and the bad language, and, you know, just too many people not wanting to become their best selves. And I started writing that stuff into my plan, as, you know, and it made it emotional for me. I did a top 10 reasons list, and I don't remember where I got the idea. I'd hate to think I thought of it myself. I probably didn't. And so, but I wrote down the 10 things that meant the most to me emotionally as to why I wanted to win in business and in life. And those things still drive me. Now, they've modified some because I accomplished some and added others, especially as I grew spiritually. You know, those things reached out more and more into the world. And so inspiring yourself to do it is about reading it, seeing and feeling and believing yourself doing it, allowing yourself to want it bad, reading good books, listen to good messages, keeps you growing, keeps you inspired. You write deep and important your emotions into it. You've done a top 10 reasons list that I used to read before I read my plan to keep me emotionally engaged before I started reading it. And wow, did it change my life. You know, and you got to work at this. All right, now I'm going to shift gears and talk about some things that are part of my passion. I have, in my business plan, I've identified people in the company, a number of them, not all of them. So, you know, some people are working with others, and these are some that I've handpicked that I think have the capacity to become an industry giant. Now, these are people that have already proven themselves a good bit in the business and go from there. But I want to talk to all of you about becoming industry giants and what it means. And before you'll ever become really successful in this business, I've got to let you know a few things. One, get ready to fight for what you want. You know, I mean, the world is full of messages like the one down in that corner. Not everyone gets to be an astronaut when they grow up. And that's, of course, supposed to be symbolic that you're working at a fast food restaurant. You know, it's interesting. Cindy was telling me yesterday, she was talking to a young woman who's graduated from the University of California, got a degree, and she's working in a clothing store for an hourly wage. You know, and it's just not going to come to her. I mean, you can come out of college, and that doesn't mean you're going to get a job anymore. That's for daggone sure. Everybody on this listening to this call knows that's true. You got to get ready to fight for what you want. Fight for it. Get out there. Get after it. See people. You want a job? That's what you got. You want your business to be better? Be ready to fight for it. I mean, life will only give you what you're ready to fight for. What I'm talking about is taking control. I'm not talking about trying to control other people's lives, but you better take control of your own, and you better take control of your direction, and you better be willing to fight for it. What did they say? Well, I don't want to seem obnoxious. Well, take the risk, will you? You know, we can work on your obnoxiousness. I don't know what to do with somebody who goes, well, I don't, no whiners, and you got to fight for it. That's just, I wish it wasn't so, but you do. And when I talk about take control, here's some things to think about. If you accept being average and ordinary, I mean, there's an equal sign. You get it. That's exactly what you get. Your acceptance of it equals you getting it. No way around it. That young woman accepts that she went to college and did her studies and she said she was in the art areas and wants to work in a museum and have that kind of thing. Well, I'd be beating down the doors of museums. I'd be in every one of them talking to them, about, hey, I want to work here. I mean, people want to hire people who want to work there. You know, I'd rather be working hourly wage in the thing I wanted to do than handing, anyway, taking my wife's black American Express card, because Cindy made it up in her mind a long time ago that she was going to have to fight for what she wanted and that she wasn't going to accept average and ordinary. And we made that decision when we got together, and I love it. I get excited about this stuff. I hope it's not just me. Here's another thing. You accept being unhappy, there's that equal sign. You get it. You aren't happy enough with your life. You aren't happy enough with what's going on in your work life. You aren't happy enough what's going on in your financial life. You aren't happy enough what's going on in your spiritual life. Don't accept it. What do I got to do to get out of it? Come back to fighting for it. Take control. Two of my favorite words, right? Take control. Here's another thing. You accept financial problems, you get it. All right, you guys, your future is not fries. Or that question, what is that question? Do you want fries with that? Do you want to supersize it? These are not questions I want you to be asking people with any regularity. There's no aspiration there. Hey, not everyone gets to be an astronaut because they're not willing to fight for it. Not everyone gets to be financially secure because not everybody's willing to fight for it. Not everybody's willing to take control. But you got to be ready, and you got to take control. Oh, I got to stop for a breath. Oh, I got excited. I'm going to take some water. People that are industry giants do this. And who's the most famous giant of all? There he is, the Jolly Green Giant. Okay, maybe not the best analogy for this, but I like that guy loves corn and peas and lima beans. Anyway, so enough of that. Back to the points. You've got to demand for yourself happiness and success. Notice I capitalized the word demand. You got to demand it. Demand it. Does that sound goofy to you? Start practicing. Demand it. All right? You got to figure out in your mind, I'm going to demand happiness and success, because if I don't, it's not going to come to me. This is one of the great life lessons of mortality, of your very existence on earth, that you can, and I always suggest that it be done prayerfully, so you're aiming this power at the right things. You can, with your mind and with your determination, take over everything. Doesn't mean it's instant gratification, right? But this is what you've got to do. You've got to groom it, channel it by putting it in writing and reading it, all that stuff. But all this stuff is to enhance your thinking for 2013. You've got to be a dreamer. Dream, dream, dream. Now, I don't mean sit on the couch, eating chips, and during the ads, you're fantasizing about being more than you are right now. It may not mean this to you, but I want to redefine the word then. Being a dreamer to me is someone who is also action-oriented. Not a fantasizer, not this vague stuff. I once heard that a dreamer of the day, basically can't be stopped because your eyes are wide open, but you're still dreaming. Not some random thing that you just dreamt about that night, but you are dreaming during the day, wide awake, with clarity. I know what my dreams are. I love to dream. I love to think about accomplishing things, be in places. One of my big dreams is helping people I care about a great deal become great success stories in their own life and business. I love doing that in church and assisting people spiritually as I have been assisted, as I've been assisted in the business too. I love returning the favor and participating in that. It gives me good feelings inside, warms my heart. It inspires me. It keeps me working. Dream about the things you want. Dream about the places you want to go. Dream about paying the price and winning once and for all. With this, kind of back to fighting for it, you got to compete. And the one thing I'm talking about in your competition is competing with yourself. Now, I compete with other people too. I'd go into some meeting, talk to other leaders as I was coming out in the business. Some guys, I got 20 guys I talked to, they're kicking my butt. And I'm going, I could have gone, they're better than me. And my feeling was, Man, I'm going to get them. I remember some of my friends certainly have heard this story, but I was in a competition, a contest, but I wasn't really competing. I kind of wanted to compete and I wanted to win, but I didn't want anybody to know I wanted to win. So I didn't give it all I had. This is a national competition at my level in the business in the first company I was a part of. And I said, go get it. You can be number one. And I said, I don't care about that. I just want, and it was all nonsense. I did care. I just didn't want people to know in case I didn't get it. Then they wouldn't think, oh, poor Rich. I bet you he's disappointed. That's pansy thinking. That's loser thinking. And I was thinking like a pansy and thinking like a loser. So guess what? I lost. I was at this recognition event. The president of the company's doing the recognition. They were recognizing the top 10. And all of a sudden, when he started naming names, I was just crushed inside thinking I hadn't given it all I got. If you give it all you got and you end up second or fourth or something, you don't feel that bad. I've been in contests. I remember one in particular, my base shop. We gave it all we had, and we were eighth. And I remember a time we gave it all we had, and we were number one. The difference was kind of the rhythm of our base, and we had some guys coming up getting ready for SMD, so it was a mature team. It's kind of like my son's golf team last year had a bunch of seniors on it. And so they were number one ranked team in the state. Then they graduated. Now it's a young team again. They're not as good. Well, it was kind of base shops go through those kind of cycles. But I hadn't competed in this first contest early in my career, and all of a sudden they're going through, the president of the company is going 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, hadn't mentioned my name yet, 5, 4, 3, hadn't mentioned my name yet. Now I'm dying, which means I missed it to the top 10 entirely, or I'm either 2 or 1. Had I won anyway? Well, guess what? The president of the company says, now this number 2 guy was so close, and he holds up his fingers with a little space in between. He was that close to being number 1. This, I promise you, is a day he'll never forget. There's only, when you're that close to being number 1, you don't do it. That meant you could have just done a little bit more, paid a little more of a price and been the champion, but you aren't, and you came close to being a champion, but you're not. He just went on and on, and I'm like dying in my chair. Is he talking about me? He's talking about somebody else, and he says, boy, there's only one number 2. I'd rather be anything but number 2. I'd rather be 10. I'd rather be 100. But I just don't want to be number 2. I'm not going to get that close to number 1 and not win. I don't want to lose in the championship game, get that close to my dream and have it slip. And he just wore me out. And then number 2, Rich Thawley. And it killed me. And I resolved that night never to let that happen to me again. You got to compete. I was a little less than classy back then. I'm still a little less than classy now, but I was a lot less than classy back then. I went up to the guy that won. He was a good guy. I remember his first name. His name was Nate. And I looked him in the eye and I said, Nate, I don't care how hard you work, how much you do. You will never, ever, ever beat me in anything in competition in this company again. All you're ever going to see is my butt disappearing in the distance, because that's the only view of your. And so I went on, and wasn't my greatest moment. But the fact of the matter is, he never did ever beat me in anything again. Great guy too, but the point was, you got to be willing to compete, and then you can get better as you go on how to deliver your message. Next, you can change. You can change. You can change. I told this at a Wealth Bowl at Fresno with Penny Oy and June De La Cruz and John Pham and Steve Cowan, a whole bunch of other good leaders that were there. And now I've not said some, and so Armando Gil and some of the others that I didn't mention, I apologize for not mentioning your name, Armando. And so, this great group was there, 1,800 people, and I talked about changing. And I talked about a church leader, and I read this, and this person had come up to them and were talking about people and talking about personal growth. And this person said to him, well, I just don't believe people can change much. I don't believe a leopard can change its spots. And this church leader, his last name is Monson, said, well, that's probably true. Basically, from what I know about leopards, they can't change their spots. He says, but I don't work with leopards. I work with human beings. And the message was they have a tremendous godly potential and they can change and get better every day. You know, and we need people that can believe in us that way, don't we? And so you need to believe in your people and you need to tell them they can change, just like I'm telling you, you can change. And I'm telling you, I believe in you that you can change. I know it's true. Had I not watched it with tens of thousands of people, I probably wouldn't have the conviction that I do. But I have. I've watched it in my own life. I've watched it in my family, watched it in our children, watched it in my church. I used to watch it in my Boy Scout troop, for goodness sakes. And so you can change. Never buy into that stuff. Well, this is just the way I am. That's nonsense. You can change and determine to do so and figure out where you want to change. Start visualizing it. Do all the other things we've been talking about. Now, I'm going to talk about something to finish up this thing. And what I'm going to talk about is going to be a challenging thought for you. And I want you to take this as seriously. If you've listened to me before, I want you to take this as seriously as anything you've ever taken that I've talked to you about. I am now going to really explain what it takes and the 4 things I see among all the people that I've known in this industry through 33 years. They got to be legends, giants in the industry, truly great in their accomplishment. And I think I'm aware of every one of them and their career that has ever grown up in this business model that we run in this company. And there are 4 of them, and let's go through them. What giants have in common? What does a guy like Brady in football or Montana, you look at that as just, those are like iconic symbols. I don't necessarily believe Brady's personal life is gigantic status. I don't think you necessarily have to be a great human being to be a pretty effective athlete. But so we use these as icons, as kind of symbols of what a lot of people in the world see as excellence. We're going to run deeper than that because leadership in this business requires the development of the whole person. By the way, that's a blessing in everything you do, sports included, right? But let's talk about it. The first thing I see in giants is they have a constant dedication and commitment to becoming a better person. They pretty much consistently work on this every day. If they say something, they're short with somebody, or say something a little mean-spirited or critical, they'll get back and apologize. And then they'll resolve themselves to be a little better. And they write it into their plan. And they start visualizing themselves being slower to criticize and much more quick to encourage. And this focus on becoming a better person is critical in becoming a giant in our business model, because you remain one person and one couple in your marriage, but you have progressively hundreds and then thousands more people in your business looking to you for that leadership example. And that's some pressure. And so once thousands are looking at you, man, do you not have you just don't have the luxury, of dropping the ball this way, because it has such a negative ripple effect into so many lives. And so every giant I've watched, all the giants I've watched, had this dedication to becoming a better person. If you hadn't seen them for 5 years, you saw them 5 years later, you could see the growth, feel the growth, hear the growth. They were kinder, more thoughtful, more respectful. They chose their words more carefully so as not to hurt feelings, but still get across a message in a powerful way. And those who know me watch that process in me, and those I know I watched it. By the way, you can become a giant and then you can start falling off giant status if you didn't keep your commitment. I've seen that happen. There was somebody that had a tremendous relationship at one point, and he peaked and then he started sliding backwards, and his integrity deteriorated, his commitment to honesty slipped, and and it was hard for me to watch. It was frankly one of the tragedies and friendships in my life to watch that guy stumble and fall. And this guy today, for all his talent and all his past accomplishments, is broke, is alone in business. And he used to be surrounded by thousands who practically worshiped the ground he walked on, thought he hung the moon. And he fell off his commitment to maintaining and becoming a better person. I don't stand here saying, wow, I'm some amazing guy. It's not the case. Right? But, some days I'm better, some days I'm worse, but I have this commitment. I think most of the people on this call have this commitment, but we all need it. It's one of the critical elements in getting up to the top in our business model, which requires us to give and be servant leaders and lift others before we get lifted up ourselves. All that requires kind of our best selves. And so we've got to dedicate ourselves to becoming our best selves and working on that and maintaining it every day. And so that's the number one thing that all giants have in common. Here's the second one. That teamwork in the home. Because it's so demanding, this accomplishment, because you have to pay a price over an extended period of time, you need to have teamwork. The foundation has to be solid. Cindy and I needed to learn to communicate better, and we did. Just like I said, I learned to listen better. And so in these things, our interaction, we really work together. At the same time, her expressions of belief in me at times were the only thing that kept me from blowing up. You can do it. I believe in you. I've got, as we had children and I was still paying the price, I got it handled. I'll let you know when they need something extra from you. And I have that clear time every week, which is devoted to the family life. But there are times, those other days, she had to say, hey, your son Richard needs, she said their name, so I knew who it was, but I knew who my son was at that point because I only had one. Anyway, needs some extra time with Dad, or Alicia did, or Brett when he came into our lives. And so that teamwork in the home, just like I need you to help me with this in the business. I need you to talk to the spouses, the supporting people that, about kind of what are the obstacles they have to overcome and what are the attitudes they need to develop in order to withstand, the kind of the extra pressure of excellence and all of that stuff. We had the teamwork. Every giant I've ever seen had teamwork in the home. They had this dedication to becoming a better person, and they had strong teamwork in the home. And so if you aren't doing the first one, start. If you don't think you have good teamwork, man, will you work on that? That'll bless everything in your life unbelievably, but it will be a key factor in how far you can go. Now, what else do we have as giants? Every giant I've ever seen has a commitment to a simple, effective system. The basic fundamentals, they may have used different terminology. They certainly put their own personality in it. Sometimes they organized it a little bit here or there in a different way. They communicated the goals different. But the bottom line is every one of them had a simple, effective system. And in all the basic critical elements, they had it in common. And they were organized pretty much the same way. And when and guess what? If I say, ask you the question, what are the critical elements and what is the sequencing of those elements to make your system powerful and very effective? If you don't know the answer to that question, then we've just detected an obstacle on your way to gianthood. You've got to have that understanding. And so you need to make sure you're connecting with leadership that can help you get that clear in your head. So they had this dedication to being a better person. They had the teamwork in the home. They mastered and implemented and followed up and stayed totally focused on this simple, effective system. They duplicated it. They monitored their leaders. They got within those teams. They visited their offices to keep them on track. They're running this system, right, so that the business flows. All right, and now, what was the fourth one? The business is an obsession. Now, before we put anything else up on the screen, I got to explain this. in order for you to truly become good at something, much less great, there has to be a stretch of time. It's like that young man shooting 100 threes and making 86 of them. How many threes had he shot? How much instruction had he received? And how hard had he worked at it, practice-wise, to get to that point? Had that not been preceded by the obsession, the result would never have been there. Now, here's the crazy thing. It's like most people go through all their lives trying to avoid being obsessed, avoiding selling out, avoiding being a maniac. But I'm telling you, you've got to embrace the inner maniac. You've got to understand that there has to be a stretch of time where people think you're crazy. They see you paying the price, the hours you're putting in, leaving early, coming back late, and they think, they just shake their head because they just don't get it. In order to get where you want to go, you've got to go through a stretch of time. You put down everything else except your faith and your family and your business. I'd already touched on it at the beginning, but I'm going to finish talking to you about this. This is kind of my last message of the new year, and the things that I'll have supporting in the very next slide. This is my closing message for you for 2012 to contribute, because I give us a lot of, what can I say to you here this day of December in 2012 that would give you the clearest understanding, perhaps, you've ever had of what it's going to take. Now, I'm actually mentoring some people in this, because this is tough stuff. For the rest of you, you just get to hear it here. I'm not talking about you blowing up your family, you blowing up your faith. We stayed dedicated. I actually brought in what most of you would think of as my minister. We called a bishop in our church, and actually had him go through the BPM and do a follow-up interview with me and talk about what he saw with me and what I saw in our business. This was early on, and the first year or so. And I'll never forget him leaning over my desk a little bit and saying reflectively to me, Rich, it dawns on me, you really have a chance to establish your family and business and financially to set them up for the rest of your lives around here the next few years. Don't you? I said, yes, I really believe I do. He said, okay, I'm going to take that into consideration and prayerfully consider what calling you can hold, because in our church we all hold callings and responsibilities. And he then called me in and issued a call, Cindy and I, for me to teach, on Sunday, so that the rest of the days were clear, and I didn't have a calling that required the week at that point. Those callings came in my future. But during that stretch of time, my work in my faith and all that, I studied scriptures in the morning, did my prayers, and fulfilled my calling, and it was a blessing to me. But it helped organize my faith so it didn't overwhelm. On the family side, Cindy and I, and it comes back to number 2, the teamwork in the home, we really got clear on it. And I cleared Sundays, treating them as sacred. Some of you, Sabbath might be on Saturday, but some of you don't have one, and you need to have one that's really just dedicated to the higher law things in your life and to your family, your marriage and your family. And that started for me on late Saturday afternoon, typically, and Saturday night, and all day Sunday. And then Sunday evening, around 6, I picked up the phone and started calling our leadership team. And I used my Sunday conversations different than my other 6 days, where I talked more about family and their marriage and how life was going and how they felt, and and who they were serving on their team, and who did we need to help and reach out to, and and show we cared about them more, and those kind of better conversations. But I did 6 hours of it between 6 and midnight, calling my biggest guys at the end who were finishing up their 6 hours of calling, and we ended up talking to each other. Now, the next third obsession on that list, because I had 3 obsessions, is the business. And that's where I gave it everything I had. You guys, we turned off our TV and kept it off. This isn't convention talk. It really happened. For over 5 years. It just wasn't worthy of our consideration. We got rid of our hobbies. I stopped playing golf and tennis and put that stuff away. And I used to think that stuff was everything. All the sports watching I used to do on TV. Well, I'm not spending the quality of time I need to with my family if I'm sitting there watching a couple of football games. And so that ended. I put that down. Do I watch a game once in a while now? Yeah. I don't have a child in the home now. But I make sure I don't do too much of it because I want that quality communication and time with Cindy. I eliminated everything else that wasn't important. Let me give you an analogy. You're flying in an aircraft at 10,000 feet. You're approaching mountain peaks at 15,000 feet. But the plane doesn't have enough power for how much it weighs. And you're carrying a bunch of gold. Now, you think gold is really, really important. But all of a sudden, you compare it to actually staying alive 10 minutes from now. And all of a sudden, it has a way of not being anywhere near as important. And you start throwing this stuff out you thought was important. And the pioneers used to go through that. They loaded up their wagons and headed across the country to a new life, land that they could own, right? And to control their own lives and to expand our nation. And they're crossing the desert and their wagons are too heavy. And all of a sudden, the family piano wasn't that important anymore. And this heavy dining room table. And so people would travel along those routes that the pioneers were crossing the plains with. And there's all this furniture and stuff that you just, when it came to getting to your destination and having what your dream come true, all this stuff you thought was a big deal just wasn't that big a deal anymore. And you threw it out. And I'm telling you got to go through a stretch in your life. This is for our Canadian folks. Your hockey league has got to get thrown out. You say, well, I've had my kids and my daughter on 4 soccer teams at the same time, and I got to be at all of them. Well, then you're going to lose. You got to figure out some other way to make that happen. I frankly admit that our 2 oldest during this stretch while we were pouring it on, we didn't have them super involved in sports because we didn't think that was more important than the family winning and setting itself up financially for the rest of our lives and getting completely out of debt so they could have an education and not be in debt and have a better life and have a more secure life, and our family could be that way. I get riled up when I talk about this stuff. I can't believe what some of you guys sell your future for. You think it's somehow being better for your children, and it's not. What they really could profit from is watching their parents work this wonderful teamwork in the home, bust it, sacrifice, go out and win, set themselves up for the rest of their lives, and then, wow, that's how you do it. We taught our children a lot more doing that than they would have had a couple of years in soccer or hockey. Hockey. I got to say it right hockey. I still don't got it right. Hockey. That was better. Okay, and that's out of respect for our Canadian brothers and sisters. And all this other stuff that we think is such a big deal. Criminy sakes, you end up working for your kids. And I mean in the wrong way. We all do that. Man, some of you know our children, our family, and our dedication to it. Question is, can you do it? I better finish this up. And so that's our reality. And you got to go at least an 18-month time frame where you give it day and night and jettison almost everything else except your priorities and your faith in your family. Now, if you don't want to do that, I understand. This isn't something I'm demanding of you. I'm just telling you what it takes. It's what giants have in common. They went at least 18 months where none of that other stuff was in their life, and they were prospecting maniacs. They had a complete focus on the right things. Like some of you want to win, but you don't go wide. So let's go to the next slide. What causes you to rise or fall? I'm going to give you a personal recruiting challenge to finish your year and take you into 2013. Take your recruiting to the next level. What causes you to rise or fall in your business? 1, personal prospecting. Some of you just have a list of excuses as long as your daggone leg as to why you don't reach out to people and talk to them and start turning more strangers into friends. I'm busy with this, my team distracts me, but you can't do that. You aren't wide enough. You don't personally recruit anywhere near enough. You got to be growing your prospect list, maintaining it, talking to people on it. They say yes or no, keep attacking, because you got to increase your personal recruiting. and there's no way around it. You've got to improve it, because here's reality in your team, and it's a tough question. Is there anything else you can do to make up for the lack of a strong personal leadership example for your people in this area? You don't personally recruit, you lament that they don't personally recruit. You look at your SMDs, let's say if you're a leader of SMDs, they just don't recruit enough. Well, then I look at your numbers and you're not recruiting anywhere near enough. This is something you have to embrace. The commitment level, the time commitment, the sacrifice you put into your team that I was discussing on the slide before of at least 18 months. And one of the things, and I said you got to focus on the right things on that slide before, is personal prospecting and personal recruiting. Do you really think there's some talk you can give? Some book you could have your team read? Some great event you could hold over a weekend? Or some cool place you could take them that would make up for your lack of personal example? In your heart, there's no one in this call that doesn't understand what I'm saying. And so I've got a challenge for you. And here it is. I want you, now you might have the capacity to do more than this, but I want everybody on this call to get at least 3 personal recruits by January 31st. It's embarrassing if you don't do that coming into the new year when you say you want to be somebody. And this is an area you've got to do it. Minimum of 3. 12 would be better, because that's the magical liftoff speed. There's some laws in this business, like physical laws, like gravity, and, you fire a gun, it's going to recoil and that kind of stuff. And one of those laws is if you would get 12 personal recruits in a 30-day span of time, your business lifts off. It's like you strap a rocket to it. And it's something. And so there's a couple of challenges for you. It'll leave a minimum of 3, but I want some of you to embrace how am I going to get to the speed in my personal prospecting and my personal recruiting to get where sometime, the earlier the better in the year, January would be the best of all, get up to speed where I can recruit 12 people personally in a 30-day span of time and lift off my business and make sure they're in the right market. All right, we're done. I've got to get off here in a second before it shuts me down. But let me tell you what the next one, the first one, January 9th, 2013, overcoming pansiitis in yourself and bringing the cure to others. Look at that guy. Man, how'd you like that guy coming into your house? Anyway, you ain't dating my daughter. Overcoming pansiitis in yourself and bringing the cure to others. That's January 9th, second Wednesday. Same bat time, same bat channel. And we're going to have a good, heartfelt, enthusiastic, and somewhat humorous discussion, and serious, too, about overcoming pansiitis. And like I say, in yourself and bringing the cure to others. All right. Now, this one we just did will be online here within a couple of weeks. And that's kind of consistently the time frame for when it'll be available for your review. I hope it's of use to you. I hope you heard me loud and clear on my challenge. Get going. Get the 3. Figure out how you're going to get your pace up to 12. Set the example that your team needs to have. And you'll be glad you did. All right. Thanks. It was fun. See ya. Bye.